Captain's personal log. Stardate 5174. Computer, what day is it?
Stardate 51721.3.
It's only been 2 weeks. I need to talk about this. I have to justify what's happened. What I've done. At least to myself. I can't talk to anyone else. Not even to Dax. Maybe if I just lay it all out in my log, it'll finally make sense. I can see where it all went wrong. Where I went wrong. I suppose it started 2 weeks ago while I was posting the weekly casualty list in the wardroom. Every Friday morning, for the past 3 months, I've posted the official list of Starfleet personnel killed, wounded or missing in the war. It's become something of a grim ritual around here. Not a week goes by that someone doesn't find the name of a loved one, a friend or an acquaintance on that damned list. I've grown to hate Fridays. That was the moment I made the decision. It was like I'd stepped through a door and locked it behind me. I was going to bring the Romulans into the war.
Welcome back, Trekkies, to another thrilling episode of the Hit or Miss Star Trek podcast. I am your regular host, Captain Mike. Joining me, as always, is my steadfast fellow host, DK.
Hello.
Hello there, how are you doing?
I'm not too bad, my friend. How are you?
Cool. Yeah, not so bad, not so bad. And today we're diving deep into the complex and morally ambiguous world of the Romulans, again, as we continue our Romulan-themed series. This week's discussion centers on a truly pivotal episode from Deep Space Nine, the famous, or perhaps infamous, In the Pale Moonlight. And to help us unpack all the intricacies of this controversial classic, we're delighted to welcome back two fantastic returning guests. First of all, Adrienne, welcome back.
Hello, everyone. Yay.
Hello. When was the last time you were on an episode? It was a while ago, right?
I think like February?
Really? Was that
January,
a
February?
No.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I think it was actually. Now I remember. Yeah. Oh well, welcome back. And we're also joined by another returning guest and another awesome Trekkie, Lady Vean. Welcome, Vean.
Hey guys.
Hi, and you'll have been hearing Vean's voice at the end of every episode anyway, but we actually can now hear her input on an episode. So, how are you, Vean?
Doing good. Ready to talk about this episode.
Cool. So we're all here, but before we jump into our review, we've got a jam-packed episode for you, starting with all of our usual fun segments. Later on, we'll be warming up our debate skills with the legendary Hit or Miss segment. So grab a Raktajino, settle in, and let's engage. Because first, it's time for Hailing Frequencies Open.
Hailing frequencies open, sir.
Now, this would normally be a little get-to-know-you type of information, but I've been through this with other guests. We've kind of talked about your favourite things, your introduction to the Trek world, and that's all on record and on file. And Adrienne, I know we asked you your favourite Romulan-themed things, because you were on, I think, Redemption Parts 1 and 2, might have been the last one you were on.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
But Vean, it occurs to me we haven't asked you, and I know they're not the Cardassians, but do you have a favourite Romulan episode or episodes or storyline or characters or anything other than potentially this one, I guess?
Yeah, actually, I'm blanking on her name at the moment, but towards the end of Deep Space Nine, the one who has that weird lesbian energy with Kira, and she has the Jumja stick. What's her name?
Weirdly enough, she's on the Hit or Miss section later on, so you'll find out her name.
Oh, okay, good. Well, no, I liked that whole little arc, that little like mini arc with her and Kira and their interactions. I thought that was really fun. But the Romulans are usually a good time, so.
DK hates them. I've been naming and shaming him every time it comes up. So, but, yeah.
Well, and here we are almost at the end of the season. I still hate the bastards.
Well, you missed the one episode where there was a half decent Romulan when we reviewed Absolute Candor. I didn't say it was a good episode.
You said that on I Have a Needle. I seem to keep missing these episodes where they're actually decent people, and I end up with the one where they're just utter gits.
Well, yeah, for the most part, that's pretty much it. So, how are we all doing? Have we? I've already asked you this, DK, but Adrienne, have you been keeping up with some Star Trek viewing?
I've seen. I just haven't. No. I've been so busy, and
Well, that went well.
I know that Prodigy. There's new Prodigy coming out soon.
It's out now. Yeah.
Okay, I have not watched new Prodigy. I've been so busy. I haven't even watched a new episode of House of the Dragon, RuPaul's Drag Race. So I am behind. So
I'm annoyed because I wanted to try and get through Prodigy as quick as possible, and I've watched all of one episode because I've been too busy with other things. And yeah, I just want to get to it and get through it because I love Prodigy.
Prodigy is so good. Like normally, I'll watch an episode and I'll be like, ooh, and then I'll watch it again because you miss so much. But I mean, I'm much worse on that with Lower Decks.
So I'm gonna jump into the section that famously gives the podcast its name, and that is the hit or miss section.
What about my performance?
I'm not a drama critic.
So, like I said, this is basically an introduction to our debate process before we get into the episode proper. If you don't know how we do things, basically the hit or miss section involves me picking, I think I've got 4 things this week. Maybe 4, maybe 5, I'm not sure. And I'm just going to put them up on screen if you're on YouTube, and for our guests here, ask if they're a hit or a miss, and then go round in roundtable fashion and get the opinions of everybody. We'll debate it back and forth, try and come to a consensus, which is going to be more difficult with 4 of us if there's any dissension, but we'll manage. And take it from there, I guess. So, yeah, I was right. I do have 4 things because I'm expecting a lot of talk on the actual episode. So, yeah, the very first thing on the list for today is not Romulan related, as I should have said. Some things will be related to the Romulans to try and fit in with the theme, but not everything. It's not Romulan related, this one, but it is a ship because it's me, and that will surprise nobody. And it kind of relates to what I was talking about with Prodigy. So again, no spoilers because I've got nothing to spoil, but hit or miss the USS Protostar. Let's see. DK, I'm going to come to you first on this one because we've already basically had your opinion on the Starships episode. So, no point. Let's just pull the Band-Aid off with that one.
Yeah, I do love this one. It's a nifty little ship, and yeah, I fell in love with it through season 1. That affair deepened playing the Prodigy video game. So yeah,
I've not played that. Is it good?
It's not bad. It's like a child-friendly game, obviously, and it's very samey all the way through, but it's no less fun because of it. And you can fill the captain's quarter with collectibles from various episodes throughout the franchise.
Ooh, cool! I would still be doing that. That sounds fantastic.
I made sure to get everything.
I would have done the same. Kudos. So as I say, we know basically you had this on your list, I think, when we did top 10 Starfleet vessels. Yeah. So we knew you liked it, but I wanted to put it on the list anyway. Vean, I'm going to come to you next because it sounds like Sammy might like this. But what about you? What are your opinions?
Sam had a lot to say. It's fine. I'm kind of neutral on it. As you know, I'm not a big ship nerd, so. Just looking at it from a point of aesthetics, Federation design ships have never been kind of my jam. I will say I like it better than sort of the traditional saucer, Enterprise style, but I don't like it as much as Voyager. So it's kind of in between for me. The nacelles are pretty. So.
Yeah, that's the thing I like the least because they seem like the Kelvin timeline nacelles, which is. It kind of bugs me. I know it's a weird thing to be bugged about, but
it's very. My one criticism is it's very sharp looking, like it's like a knife sharp, and I think that's not traditional for Federation design. They usually have more rounded features, so I don't know. It's fine.
I think that's kind of that's a function of the fact that it's got the proto warp, so it's supposed to be like super fast. So it's meant to be like race cars and things nowadays where they're all to a point. Plus, it's tiny, which probably is another reason why it looks the way that it does. But anyway, Adrienne, what about you? Sorry.
Yeah, I want to go live there. There's a Janeway hologram, so let's go.
Not anymore, there isn't.
I know. My bad.
Spoilers for season 1.
I love this ship. I want to be there. It's like the opposite of the Equinox. Like, I'm happy to go and live there. So I love
it. Cool. And I like it for what it is as well. So I'm going to say hate. Like I said, I have a slight issue with the nacelles, but it's a super nerdy nitpick, so I don't expect anyone to take that seriously. And it is a little bit small for me for a Starfleet ship, but that's, again, it's supposed to be. So once I realized that, when you see it in comparison to other ships, and it makes a lot more sense. And it made sense anyway, considering it's got a crew of like 8 people or something. So it was always going to be, practically just a large runabout almost. And that explains how it can kind of land on planets and do its thing. But it just looks cool. I think I like the silhouette. I love the way it moves in the credits and things, like I think we sort of said in the other episode. And the proto drive is really cool. So yeah, and as I rewatched season 1, it grew on me even more than it had, which I kind of just love all the angles and the way it's animated. So I'm gonna say hit. So I think we're all basically coming to the consensus that the Proto Star is a hit. So
it's a welcoming place.
Yay! And the inside of it's pretty cool as well.
Yeah.
And it has its own vehicle replicator. That's got to be cool.
Yeah, that is amazing.
You can just make your own little car. So the second thing on the list is Romulan themed, but there's so much more going on than just that. It's a series of episodes from Star Trek Enterprise, a 3-part story. So hit or miss for United, Babel 1, and the Enar. Let's see, Vean, I'm going to come to you first on this one.
I don't care for Enterprise, so yeah, I know. I haven't actually done a full watch through of it because I just can't stand it. So it's gonna have to be a miss for me. I'm sorry, DK. It's gonna have to be a miss for me.
Adrienne, what about you? Do you know these episodes, and are you a fan?
Yes, I am an OG fan of these. I was watching them when they came out, and I thought the story of the Enar was interesting, being like a kind of a cultural person that I am. And of course, Shran is there, so I love them because I love Shran.
Yeah, cool. And what do you think of the plot line about the Romulan drone ship trying to sort of set these powers at war by imitating the other ships, and then ultimately it's what brings the founding Federation members together?
Well, of course they were doing that because that's how the Romulans are. They are duplicitous little turds.
They Romulate. Yeah. I want that on a T-shirt. I just want a picture of a bunch of Romulans and duplicitous little turds written underneath. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on, but obviously you like it, and you like the fact that, like I said, the Enar introduction was cool, and Shran was involved, so always good. Cool. DK, over to you.
Yeah, it was always good on Enterprise to see, see them update the original races, and so yeah, the Andorians with Shran, Jeffrey Combs, you can't really fault it. The Tellarites, the Enar, fine. The only thing that I had kind of a problem with is just Brian Thompson, who I just can't really take seriously as a villain in anything. And you know why, mate.
Shao Kahn?
Yeah.
But DK, the Earth was created in 6 days, so too shall it be destroyed.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, and that's the problem right there.
To bring us back, to relevance, I love this 3-parter. I remember getting very emotional when I realized that, the Romulans trying to set everybody against each other is kind of the first salvos in the Romulan War. The idea that, the 4 races that we have in the picture here, human, Vulcan, Vulcan, Tellarites, and Andorian, it's basically the United Federation of Planets founding members. So it was very emotional when I was like, yay, this is the moment. Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted Enterprise to be from the very start. But yeah, and I like the idea of the Enar. I think they're an interesting development. And I even kind of like the really dumb thing where Archer had to cut off Shran's antenna to be able to win the combat. And it's like, you're going to have to kill him. It's only by killing. And then it's like, no, we've got a loophole. Just cut off an antenna or whatever. It was dumb, but I accepted it. They've done worse. So it's a hit for me, which means overall just, Vean's wrong, which is all we need to say about that. The third thing on the list for today, we've kind of talked about her already. Is a character from the latter episodes of DS9 who was played by 2 different actresses, actually. And it is the Romulan CAC. I think Kimara CAC, to give her a full name. So, Vean, you brought this lady up. I'm going to come to you first. What do you think of her?
I love her. I think she's so fun. And I think she was a really good foil to Kira in a way that, Dukat and some of the other villains, and she's less of a villain, but she is, but I think she was a good counterpoint to Kira for where Kira was in her own arc. And I really enjoyed that storyline.
Cool. Do you remember seeing her in the other episode she was in? I think it was Inter Arma Enum Silent Legacy when she was recast.
Yeah.
Vaguely.
Okay. Fair enough. But overall, probably still going to say hit because of the cool start of season 7.
She's a hit for me.
More so for Megan Cole, I guess, than the legendary Adrienne Barbeau. But anyway, speaking of Adrienne, what's your opinion on the character?
Yes, this character was played very, very well acted by these two actresses, and the end of her arc was incredible.
Yeah, do you want to spoil that, or are we just leaving it there?
Oh, well, it doesn't end well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we'll just say that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a great arc, and I was really glad that you chose this, because it just needed another storyline to throw in there, more interaction, and really just to show these Romulans. You know what I mean?
Well, not just Romulans. I think it's we're looking at it in the Pale Moonlight, and I think the episode in question with the long Latin title is a really interesting sort of companion piece to it in the Pale Moonlight. Where
That's what I mean. They
Yeah.
go after how they treat their own. They just
Yeah. Well, the Federation, equally with Admiral Ross's double dealings and Section 31, are certainly not coming out of that smelling of roses either. But yeah,
don't let me meet that guy in a dark alley at some point.
fair enough. DK, how do you feel about Kreetak?
Yeah, I don't remember the intricacies of particular episodes, but I do remember the character simply because it was Adrienne Barbeau, and it's Adrienne
Well,
Barbeau.
it was eventually when it was recast, but yes.
Yeah, and I mean, I honestly can't think of anyone better suited to play a Romulan. To be honest, I think she's just fantastic. But yeah, I'm famously, as you alluded to earlier, do not like Romulans, but I didn't mind this character. I didn't want to kick the screen in every time she was on, so I'll take that as a hit.
Well, she was rather atypical for a Romulan. There was a bit of honour there, shall we say. So
Yeah,
I like the character as well. I like both of the storylines. I'm with Vean. I really like the season 7 sort of 2-part opener. I think it really needed a cool subplot like the Romulans and Kira facing off, because I was bored senseless by Sisko just traipsing through the desert looking for an orb. So at least that was something that saved that 2-part story. And then I love Inter Arma Enum Silent Legacy. And was quite shocked about what happened. And as you said, being a huge kind of horror nerd from around that era, as soon as I learned it cast Adrienne Barbeau in Star Trek, it was like, whoa, mind blown. So hit from me as well. So we're doing well. This is not going to continue, I fear. But so the last thing, the fourth and final thing on the hit or miss section for today is not Romulan related, but it is back to Prodigy. So hit or miss for the character of Hologram Jway. Let's see, DK, I'm going to come to you first.
yeah, I like her. It was a bit of a disconnect at first. Obviously, she's a hologram. It was nice to see the real thing show up later in season 1, but she was very much a mentor to the kids in this, and I really appreciated that angle. And there was a warmth to her, even though she was a hologram. I was actually kind of sad towards the end. So yeah, big hit for me.
Okay, cool. Adrienne, how do you feel about the emergency training hologram, Janeway?
Well, when I watched a couple of these episodes and my husband walked by, he said, "Oh, she's you," because I used to be a trainer of people in the military. So, she says, "Oh, they wrote this show for you." I see. So, I love her 100%, and I want that uniform right now.
They're not even using that one anymore now, but yeah, they've used that many different variations. Vean, I dread to come to you because I've got a feeling either you haven't seen Prodigy or you're going to tell me you hate it. But what did you make of Hologram Janeway if you've actually seen it?
I haven't watched Prodigy yet.
I gathered.
But it's Janeway. So,
Exactly.
oh, Captain, my Captain, you know?
Aw, yes.
Yeah, Okay. Yeah, same. I mean, I love Hologram Jway. Like I said, I've just rewatched season 1 before season 2 came out to try and catch, well, not catch up because I'd already seen it, but to make sure I was, on board, whatever. And so rewatching it made me appreciate all the more how Hologram Janeway is. She is Janeway, but like several years ago. And I was watching one of the behind the scenes things where Kate Mulgrew talks about how she actually does slightly change her voice for the younger Hologram Janeway to when she's playing Vice Admiral Jway, and I was like, geez, when you know that, you really do notice. And it's like, that's impressive to be able to, to modulate your performance to that level of like, I'm now playing me 10 years ago or whatever. So I appreciated that level. And like DK said, she was mom. She was the mom to the crew, and she really took them on board maternally, I think, on that level, as well as delivering some of the best kind of emotional lines. We've talked ad nauseum about Timer Mock, DK, but, when she gets the line about, you may not think you're a crew, but you sure look like one and stuff like that. It's like, oh, yeah. Mum's approving of us. And, without wanting to spoil too much, very, very, very emotional end of season 1. So
yes.
Yeah. And yeah, that was a very tear-inducing moment, shall we say, at the end. And yeah, like I said, we hope that the crew continue to make her proud. So there we go. So yeah, hit, I think, from basically all of us. So with that out of the way, we can move on to the dreaded business of this bloody episode. That we've hinted where we all stand on it, and I think I'm basically on an island alone, but here we sit. So this will begin our analysis of the episode in question. Yeah, before we get into the actual, nitty-gritty of the episode, if you've been keeping up with us this season, you know that as a kind of nod to our fellow podcast and much more successful, the Delta Flyers currently journeying through the wormhole, that we homage, or if you're less kind, rip off, their idea to do a limerick and haiku to try and fit with every episode. I decided I was going to basically recuse myself from this because of my obvious bias. So for the first time, DK agreed to sort of step foot and do a limerick and a haiku. And I believe, Adrienne, do you have a haiku or is it just limericks?
Limericks only.
Okay. Well, in that case, we're going to just go around and vote. Do we want to hear the limericks first or do we want to hear DK's haiku? Vean, what do you think?
Limerick.
Okay, limericks first. Okay. I'm going to say the same. So,
Me too.
okay, that's fair enough. So, DK, do you want to kick us off with your first limerick then for this episode?
Yay! Jadzia is sometimes a goof, about Klingon opera, even aloof. While playing a role, cunning, brilliant, yet droll, proves to Sisko the need for some proof.
That was very specific to a moment of the episode, but okay, cool.
They're all that way. Very specific.
I think DK's is more kind of all-encompassing for the episode, but yeah. So DK, do you want to share with us the
Okay. Bear in mind, this is my very first limerick ever because I'm notoriously bad at this crap.
Oh, I'm excited.
Please don't be.
Okay.
Sisko's confession erased after one take, while Quark is still on the make. To bring the Romulans in, with Garak we'll have a fling, but bad news, he knows it's a fake.
Oh, that's good, because you had a Quark thing, and I really tried to do a Quark limerick out of this, but I couldn't pull it off. So well done.
Oh, thank you.
Well done indeed. So Adrienne, do you want to read one more before we go into the actual behind the scenes of the episode? Because you've got plenty.
Oh,
Go
okay.
on, share another with us.
This one's a little bit darker.
Okay.
Sisko asleep in his bed, keeping visions of peace in his head. But then there's a voice, waking now not a choice, for the Dominion invades Beta Z.
I knew where you were going with that, but that's very good. Very good. Yes, bad news in the middle of the night. Awesome. That's great. Cool. Thanks for those three, you two. And DK, this is a moot point, and I've already put a lot onto you, but I'm assuming you didn't come up with any slash fiction for this episode.
No, but, the entire episode is about the Federation getting screwed, so I think it covers it all.
as I say, we'll always begin with a little bit of behind-the-scenes information about the episode and how we kind of got here. I've shared it out between myself and DK this week, partly to alleviate my obvious bias, as I've mentioned, and partly because it's very long, because there's a lot to get into. So I'll kick us off and tell you that the earliest origins of this episode are to be found in a discussion among the writers about various pivotal moments in recent US history. One such moment was the 1964 Gulf of Tonkin incident, when a North Vietnamese gunboat allegedly attacked a US naval vessel, leading to an increased military presence in Vietnam itself and effectively beginning the Vietnam War. Excuse me. Another defining moment under discussion was the 1974 Watergate scandal, which began with 5 men being arrested for breaking into the Watergate complex and ended with the resignation of President Richard Nixon, who was facing an impeachment in the House of Representatives and a conviction in the Senate due to the discovery of, among other things, illegal political espionage, improper tax audits, unauthorized wiretapping, and secret funding hidden in Mexico. Remember when presidents were able to be criminals? No? Let's move on. Thinking about the sheer scale of these incidents and the massive repercussions felt for years afterwards by people from all walks of life, the producers asked former staff writer and producer Peter Allen Fields to compose a story based around a political controversy involving a secret that, if discovered, could have huge consequences throughout the quadrant. Whew, that's a lot. Fields' original premise revolved around Jake Watergating First Minister Shakar. He discovers an undisclosed secret about Shakar from his days in the Bajoran resistance, which, if it got out, would bring down the Shakar government and throw Bajor into chaos. When Jake tells his father about the secret, Sisko tries to stop him from publishing it. However, when the staff writers went to work on Fields' story, they couldn't make it work, so they altered the basic premise to Jake discovering something about his own father. Ronald D. Moore compared the premise to the film All the President's Men, which is a great film, by the way. This was the idea around which Michael Taylor composed his first draft of the script, the inherent conflict between Jake and Ben Sisko. The story would begin when Jake tries to get an interview with Garak for the Federation News Service, but Garak's not interested in being interviewed. Jake presses him, but Garak won't budge, and so Jake goes to his father to try and get him to put some pressure on Garak. However, Sisko tells him to stay away from Garak altogether. Intrigued, Jake begins to investigate and discovers that his father and Garak are involved in shady dealings and are trying to bring the Romulans into the Dominion War by lying to them about the Dominion's so-called plan to invade Romulan space. We got there in the end. Michael Taylor is credited for the teleplay of the episode, but much of his contribution didn't make the final draft. Taylor did come up with the idea of the fake Dominion rod, basing the idea on the historical Zimmerman note of 1917, in which Germany offered to help Mexico retake the southwest United States to keep America out of World War I. Instead, the American public became enraged by the implications of the telegram, facilitating America's entry into the war against Germany. For a time, the note was thought to be faked in order to convince America to join the war. Over to you, DK, if we have any breath left.
Okay. By the final draft of the script, which was actually written by Ronald D. Moore, although he is uncredited, Jake had been removed entirely. The reason for this was because the relationship between Jake and Sisko, as established in many episodes over the course of the 5.5 years of the show, was simply too strong. Their bond as father and son had become so pronounced that it was virtually impossible to conceive of anything destroying it. As Moore explains, it was really no contest between Sisko and Jake, because as much as we want to, it's hard to get those two characters into conflict with each other, so it didn't really ring true. Jake was so young and Sisko was so experienced, you didn't really believe the central conflict of the show. Now, according to Moore, the title of the episode was a reference to the phrase, "Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?" from the 1989 Tim Burton movie Batman. Originally, the writers were going to have the Dominion invade Vulcan, not Beta Z. The episode was structured so that at the moment Sisko begins to waver as to whether or not to carry his scheme through, a planet falls to the Dominion, serving to galvanise his resolve. But the writers didn't want to invent a new planet or name somewhere inconsequential. They wanted a planet that would carry weight for viewers, and they ultimately narrowed it down to Vulcan and Beta Z. They initially decided on Vulcan, but then changed their minds when they came to the realisation that Vulcan just carried too much weight. Ronald D. Moore commented on the writing of the episode. He said, "Actually, I think that it is the one I am most proud of the ones I worked on, even though I didn't take a credit on that one. I felt like that was the best, most interesting script that challenged the show in a real way and challenged the characters as far as we'd ever challenged them." And in a Star Trek New Frontier short story by Peter David, It is suggested that the Romulans uncovered Sisko's deception at an unknown point in the future, leading to open warfare between the United Federation of Planets and the Romulan Star Empire. And that is in Tales of the Dominion War Stone Cold Truths.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, there's a few things I think that deal with that are non-canon sources, but cool. Hopefully there was something there that was interesting, and it shows you where we got to the political intrigue of the episode in question, and we haven't bored everyone half to death. So, yeah, the way that we do our reviews, if you're not familiar, is to break it down into little sections for the purposes of our notes. So things like writing, plot, direction, VFX, acting, production design, etc., etc. But it's just basically a loose form to try and keep our thoughts together. And if the conversation flows a different way, as it very well might this episode, we'll just kind of follow that thread. So, with that in mind, we are going to start, I think, with the writing / plot. And DK, did I give you anything to read from this, or
You did not.
That's what I thought, because I've got a little bit of just sort of housekeeping to deal with. In terms of the writing, the closing of the episode was based on a line of dialogue in the 1962 John Ford movie The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which is spoken by Tom Doniphan, played by John Wayne. Cold-blooded murder, but I can live with it. Hallie's happy, she wanted you alive. Sisko's line that we'll have heard in the log at the start of the episode about having stepped through a door and locked it behind him, and Garak's line attempting to force the door open may cause it to explode, serve as interesting allegories for their respective roles in the story itself. While it was Sisko who made the decision to initiate the plan to bring the Romulans into the war, it was Garak who applied the pressure that stopped Sisko from pulling out, and ensured that the plan went through to its successful conclusion. Of the episode, writer Michael Taylor says, it showed how Deep Space Nine could really stretch the Star Trek formula. It pushes the boundaries in a realistic way because the decisions Sisko makes are the kinds of decisions that have to be made in war. They're for the greater good. I hate that phrase. So, yeah. And just as a side note, tellingly, this episode aired exactly the next episode after Section 31 debuted in the show. So we can pinpoint exactly the moment Star Trek died. Anyway... Ooh, I was waiting on somebody kicking off there, but I'm surprised nobody did. So then, the writing in general of this episode. What was that?
You want me to go off on 31? Because I will.
Yeah, they're terrible. They suck. They're a bad concept.
It's a bad concept. And you know what pisses me off about Section 31 is that we have now, by the time this came out, 4 shows and multiple movies that are establishing a better future for humanity, a post-scarcity future, a moral, ethical future, and then here comes Section 31, and it's just fucking business as usual. It's just shady shit, and doing things, and manipulating things to get our way, and I'm just not here for that.
You've literally summed up my exact issue with this episode. But, okay, cool. Right, then the writing of the episode... Who wants to jump in first? DK, we're going to come to you first for a sort of somewhat tempered view. How do you feel about the writing of this episode overall and what it's kind of trying to say?
You're going to hate me, but I do actually like this. I think it's a nice 40-something minutes. It's tight.
Nice?
You know what I mean. I'm British, dude. Again, we feed off misery. It's got a tight little plot. There's a lot going on in here, a lot of heavy stuff in here, as was the case for that era. And I think they did it really well. Yes, it completely went against Gene's vision. I know we're going to get there, so I might as well just, drop us straight in it. But I think that was, a testament to just how up the creek the Federation were at this point. And I think, desperate times call for desperate measures. And I know you're going to say, no, you should never resort to that. But at some points, the dirty work is going to have to be done. And I couldn't have seen it working in any other series but DS9. And I was reticent to watch it, especially out of context with regards to the season as a whole. But yeah, I think it holds up, and some great little character moments in there.
Yeah, I'm not going to deny that fact, but that's fair enough. I'll wait to give my kind of right to reply to that, I think, until we've heard from everyone. So, Vean, if we're able to hear you, I think you're slightly cutting out, but did you have sort of overall thoughts on the writing and the plot of the episode?
Am I cutting out? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're there, but you're just very faded.
Oh shit. Okay. Well, yes.
There we go.
Of
That's
course.
better. That's better.
Okay. Good. Of course I have strong feelings, as you know. Um, if somebody asks me what's the best episode of Deep Space Nine, it's in the Pale Moonlight, and I would argue that it is possibly the best episode of not just Deep Space Nine, but of Star Trek in general. So,
Okay.
did I lose you again?
No.
No,
we hear ya.
I'm
No, I think Mike's just biting his lip.
Oh, okay, okay, good.
There is
So-
blood. There is actual blood.
Look, the thing is, we have established by this point in Deep Space Nine that Sisko is willing to do some shady shit. I mean, he's done a lot of it already, so I don't think this is out of character for him. I do think it might have worked a little better if he was proceeding lone wolf, like without the knowledge of Starfleet intelligence and Starfleet's higher command. But I think it's brilliantly written. I think it's brilliantly executed. And I think it's an amazing piece of work. I will say, and this is nitpicky, but it does have a line that I absolutely hate. And I don't blame poor Andy Robinson because he did the best he could with this line, but it bugs the shit out of me. It's when he's planning to go kill the criminal. And Sisko's like, you're not leaving the station until we know this worked, and go back to your quarters. And Garak goes, and I'll be by to say hello. And I'm like, that line is so forced and so fake. That's not how people talk, and it drives me up all. Like, you're saying hello right now. Why would you? Like, I know the implication.
Yeah, I was going to say the very strong implication is I'm away to murder you, basically.
No, I get that. But there are so many other ways to get that point across in a natural way. I hate that line.
Well, that's Garak, though, to be fair, isn't it, really? But, yeah. Okay, Adrienne, what about you?
Well, just talking about that one line and a few other things that went on between Grathon Tolar and Garak made me believe that in the past Garak has tortured him.
Yeah,
The way that he tortured, he was talking about in the Dies cast that he tortured Dr. Parmok with his eyes, walking in. And so to me, it was like they knew each other in the past. I mean, because Tolar goes, Garak is here. So that's what that made me think. But anyway, everything Vean said is 100% spot on. Probably the best, definitely the best Deep Space Nine episode. Way up in the top 5 for me of all of Star Trek. It's the acting. And these writers are so lucky to have these incredible actors to tell this particular story as they wrote it.
That's fair enough, I guess. Let me just find my disclaimer here before I start talking.
We're gonna throw down Mike. Is that what's happening?
I'm going to share a little disclaimer of. I wish I could credit whoever it was, but somebody shared this on Twitter, and I feel like this is a very ample time to share it.
Is this where you break out my Michael Jackson popcorn gif?
Yeah, probably. But yeah, just to give you a quick disclaimer, I can like something and still think it has flaws. I can dislike something and still respect what works about it. If I love something, it's cool if you hate it. If I hate something, I'm still glad if you dig it. If I hate something, it doesn't ruin the fandom. Cool?
Yeah, of course.
So, with that said, I hate this episode with physical passion. I find it borderline unwatchable. I find it an uncomfortable watch. I don't think any of what happens in it is necessary at all. In a fictional world, you can decide what your characters have to do, and I detest that they brought it into this position. If you're going to have to do this, you certainly do not pick the Starfleet captain, the head of your show, the number one position that's supposed to represent morality, and completely sully them. I think that was a huge mistake. Without getting into the optics of the fact that you've turned the first black captain into a criminal, because why not? So I don't think it was necessary. And I think they're all so proud of themselves because it's so realistic. I don't go to Star Trek for real-world realism and all of the brutal, harsh realities of life. You know, it was supposed to be a vision of a better future, as Vean basically said when it comes to Section 31. And the idea that this kind of thing can happen is just a spit in the face of that. So, yeah, I am not a fan. I don't think it's something that you needed to do. And to your point, DK, the kind of counterpoint that I would make to that is where you're like, oh, sometimes you have to be realistic. I compare this episode to Zack Snyder's treatment of superheroes in that, yes, in a realistic world, I know that a man that dresses as a giant bat is probably going to kill people. I don't need to see that in film, no matter how realistic it is. Heroes should be heroes. They're escapism. Do you know what I mean? And making them less than that, criminalizing them, it's not big and it's not clever. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of the initial part of my argument. I want to give you guys a chance to respond. So agree, disagree, why, how?
Because I think that's all a very good point. And if they hadn't already established this as part of Sisko's character, like if it just came out of nowhere, I would agree. But the whole thing, his whole Michael Eddington arc, and that's my point. How does you bring up Eddington though? But how does it not make Sisko a massive hypocrite for having a go at Edison, or at Admiral Layton in Homefront and Paradise Lost for wanting to win the war their way? How was that any different than him being a criminal to do things his way? But that's Sisko
not a good
is a
thing.
hypocrite, and he is an immoral captain. He has taken many immoral actions before this point, so it doesn't seem out of character that he would do this.
I'm not complaining that it's out of character. I'm complaining that it shouldn't be the case that your show captain should be immoral. Whether there's other examples of it or not.
But then why this episode particularly and not the others? That's my question.
Well, this is the one that stands out that is glaringly the worst example of immoral actions that are, I don't know, they stand out to me in a bigger way. We're not discussing the other episodes, but certainly if there were other moments that happens, I would take issue with those as well. And there are moments when Sisko stands up for kind of Starfleet principles and things as well. You know what I mean? As not doing, but I just think, like I said, because the narrative of this episode basically revolves around, you've had to break morality to protect it. And I hate that phrase. We've done it for the greater good. It's so pathetic, and it just not to get too serious or drag it down to real world stuff, but it reeks of like justifying torture in Abu Ghraib and stuff, because it's like, well, we're fighting the terrorists, we're justified, greater good, anything, we can do anything because the ends justify the means, and it's like, do we have to? Do we really have to acknowledge that? Especially in a show that's supposed to be, like I said, optimistic and a view of the future. I'm very uncomfortable with it.
I think it's supposed to make you uncomfortable. That's the entire point, though.
But why? What's gained by that?
A damn good episode.
You say it's a damn good episode. I disagree. I think it's a potentially great episode of any other drama. It's a terrible episode of Star Trek, because that's not what the show is. So
yeah, we're going to have to disagree on that one.
Well, it's war.
All of these 9.
It's war.
But okay, to take these one at a time. That's why I don't like Deep Space Nine, first of all, for the most part, because it tends to veer way too much into that dark territory. I blame Babylon 5. Secondly, its war as a justification. Its war as a justification for anything is very dangerous territory to step on, because at what point do you justify too much? At what point is it And at the end of the day, I mean, we could be here forever getting into the fictional specifics of it, but the Federation started this war. It was us that invaded the Gamma Quadrant and started settling there. Why are we suddenly the righteous good guys in this situation? It doesn't make any sense to me. How is the Federation recruiting people any different than what the Dominion are doing? There's not a solidly enough drawn line there as to why, like, oh, it's terrible, it's evil, we can't, join their Federation, we have to join ours. It's, like I said, it doesn't quite sell it to me as to, like, this is the worst thing ever. And even regardless of all that, like I said, I hate the immorality of the only way to do it is this, because you're writing it. You can do what you want. You know?
Well, Dominion wants to commit genocide against the Alpha Quadrant, and Sisko...
We've seen no indication of that. They haven't.
Oh, they have said that.
any...
They have said that. It's known, and Sisko says, "Not on my watch."
I don't buy that the Dominion want to commit genocide. We've had nothing but assurances that they don't want to do that. They've signed non-aggression pacts with multiple species. Weyoun's always out there as the kind of, smarmy two-faced diplomat, like, come and join us, don't join the other guys. And they didn't wipe out Cardassia. I mean, it didn't work out well for them, but they were willing to kind of...
They wanted to. They wanted to.
Well, yeah, maybe.
And after they finished with Cardassia, you think they were going to stop? As long as we submit to their authoritarianism, we can exist.
But that's, in what way does that then, us breaking the rules, make us any different than them? So we have to challenge their authoritarianism with our own? I mean, the Romulans did nothing to us, dragging hundreds of Romulans into getting killed for something that had nothing to do with them. It's letting, bioweapons just get loose to whoever might want them to commit genocide on multiple planets. It's murdering an innocent or innocent-ish senator and a criminal, admittedly, but still. And it's just, at what point do you stop and think, well, like I said, there's a point in the episode where Sisko's like, maybe I should have just stopped it right there and said, thanks for your input, Garak, I'm just going to walk away. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what you should have done. And that's what the show as written, the way I would prefer it, would have done. It would have potentially been boring, but,
Right, that wouldn't have been the story, though. That wouldn't have been the story. That's why the story is incredible, and none of us want any of these things to ever happen. But that's just how the story is written.
I don't think it's necessary to write that story in a place like Star Trek.
Yeah,
so I think that there's a time and place for it, and I don't think Star Trek is it. And like I said, it's the same as I don't want drab dark realism in my superhero movies. It's the same argument. I don't know how you can separate that.
You've got to bear in mind that the Federation is only optimistic because humanity pretty much almost wiped itself out right at the start. So it's not like there's an eternal optimism to the Federation. Yes, it has its ideals and it has its goals, but it's occasionally things are going to go the other way.
I don't buy that. I don't buy that occasionally things have to go the other way, and I don't buy that you only stand by your morals while it's convenient.
They don't. They don't. They don't have to go the other way, but sometimes we have to make a choice. And I'm sure, certain groups right now, as we speak, are having these kind of discussions.
No doubt, but I'm not watching a contemporary show about politics in the year, 2024. I wouldn't watch that because it's depressing and I don't want to. Do you know what I mean? I don't need to see that. I don't need to see people acting immoral because that way I can feel better about myself because I can relate to it. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. It bugs me no end. It really does. If you'll permit me to be a little dramatic for a second, I was going to share a few quotes from other episodes that I feel are relevant. First of all, I've brought up Inter Arma Enum Silent Legis, and there's a couple of quotes from that, I think, which kind of say a lot. The first is Sloan from Section 31 talking to Bashir, and he says, "Let's make a deal, Doctor. I'll spare you the ends justify the means speech, and you spare me the we must do what's right speech. You and I are not going to see eye to eye on this subject, so I suggest we stop discussing it." Bashir's response to Admiral Ross's kind of duplicitous nature and immorality is, "In time of war, the laws fall silent." Cicero. So is that what we've become? A 24th century Rome driven by nothing other than the certainty that Caesar can do no wrong? And Ross's response is just, "This conversation never happened." Okay. Sloan talking to Bashir says, "The Federation needs men like you, Doctor. Men of conscience, men of principle, men who can sleep at night. You're also the reason Section 31 exists. Someone has to protect men like you from a universe that doesn't share your sense of right and wrong." I hate that so much. It's so cynical and terrible. There's a couple of other things. I have one from Voyager, which I think sums this up quite well. Captain Ransom and Captain Janeway, with Ransom saying, "We traveled over 10,000 light years in less than 2 weeks. We'd found our salvation. How could we ignore it?" And Janeway responds, "By adhering to the oath you took as Starfleet officers to seek out life, not destroy it." Ransom's response, it's easy to cling to your principles when you're standing on a vessel with its bulkheads intact, manned by a crew that's not starving. And Jamie's response, it's never easy, but if we turn our backs on our principles, we stop being human. Just saying. And just this is not really related as such to the episode, but it's just a little, I think it sums up to me why I kind of want the untarnished Starfleet and the importance of it to me. And it's from Prodigy, weirdly enough, so it has some relevance. It's when, at the end of season 1, Gwen is speaking to Tridge, the Klingon, and she's trying to get help for the Starfleet that are tearing themselves apart, and just says, they've lost control of their ships and it won't stop till Starfleet destroys themselves. I'm requesting your aid in our immediate assistance and help relaying this message to all our non-Federation allies. We beg you, your transports, your freights, your shields, anything that will slow the attack Starfleet is inflicting upon itself. Because in the infinite of space, everyone needs to know there's a place out there willing to accept us all, no matter how different we think we are. Without Starfleet, the Federation crumbles and that dream dies. If they've ever helped you as they helped us, then hear my words. Allies, civilians, outsiders, anyone, Starfleet needs you now or it will not survive. See, that's the Star Trek I want. I don't want, like, we have to be corrupt to do bad things in order to survive.
Yeah, but I don't think the actions in this negate anything in that.
I think they do.
No.
Like I said, at what point are you any different than the people you're opposing? If you're willing to do anything.
That's
there
on
has
the
to be
individual to make that choice. It's you know, it's like looking at one group of people and just saying that one group of people are absolutely infallible. It just doesn't happen. And I know this is fiction, but it's always been set up to relate to events and situations that go on in the real world. Okay, so to bring it back to my other point then, are you fine with Batman murdering people? Not necessarily. But
How
Batman is one because as I say, a bigger equivalent will be Justice League or the Avengers.
Mm.
It's just one individual out of an organisation.
Right, but
yeah,
the point still stands. The Starfleet
it doesn't really because Superman has killed, Batman has killed. It's been, but you don't look at these heroes with any less of an admiration. You don't look at the organisation with any less of an admiration.
No, but people passionately argue that it shouldn't happen, though. Do you know what I mean?
They can do, but at the end of the day, one person does not does not make up the organisation.
Fair enough. Like I said, if it was anyone else, I may even have less of an issue with it. But making it the Starfleet captain, I think, is part of what really irks me. Because, like I said, there has to be something for me that represents better. I've explained it to death, so without wanting to get much more into it.
Well, I think in this episode, Bashir really represents your position, though.
Completely, 100%, yeah.
And I think we haven't gotten to the acting yet, but I have thoughts about that scene as well. But I think that part of the argument here that supports your position, Mike, is that it is only a handful of quote unquote bad actors, right? And so if the Federation at large, or even Starfleet at large, were aware of this, there would have been, because of our morality, there would have been such an outcry against it, that if Fadzia and Bashir and Worf, and they all knew what Sisko was doing, it wouldn't have happened. So
you say that, but I kind of take issue. I think you mentioned it earlier. I take issue with the fact that Starfleet approves the plan, which is.
I agree with you. I think this would have been a more effective episode if it was purely just Sisko doing it. But we do have, a handful of admirals and higher ups going, okay. But of course, they'd already planned to, eliminate the founders on more than one occasion, like complete genocide. So. Where does that leave us in terms of, getting the Romulans involved? Obviously, they don't care.
Yeah. See, I think the issue I have is that I just don't want it to have been necessary, because it kind of, I don't know, the same reason that, I don't like that it took Section 31 trying to genocide the founders to win the war, and that we're celebrating that as well, we did what was necessary, even though it was horrid. It's just no. Like I said, if you're winning your freedom by things like that, then what's the point? Anyway, but yeah, you're not supposed to agree with me, Vean. Dang it, you're supposed to disagree. So, but yeah, I mean, I know what you're coming from, and like I said, I can't fault the acting, and in terms of, like I said, the putting them in this position, if it was any other kind of show, almost, I guess. But for me, like I said, it makes me very uncomfortable, and not in a way that it's like, well, drama should challenge you and blah blah blah. It's just like, nah, there's got to be internal rules and logic to these things, I think, for it to matter. And this, I don't know. I don't like it. And I think the episode itself doesn't like these actions, or it wouldn't basically have Sisko erase all knowledge of them and tell nobody and never bring it up again.
You get that entire scene in Garrick's Tailors later on where Sisko, finds out just how much he's screwed up on this.
Yeah, precisely. There's a lot of awful conveniences of like, all of the worst things that are possible are happening, so we conveniently have to do this now, which I kind of take issue with, but it's not the biggest thing. So we'll move to the acting then, which I think we basically all agree is probably a highlight of the episode. Does somebody want to start us talking about the acting and the actors in this episode? I think there's particularly 2 or 3 that stand out.
I will say Terry Farrell does brilliantly, especially on that when she's playing devil's advocate and standing in for the Romulans.
Yes, I agree. That's a fantastic single scene. I can see why Adrienne latched onto that for a Limerick, because, yeah, that is a very good scene between the 2 of them. Anything else, anyone?
Yeah, I think there were obviously some standout big performances. Andy Robinson in particular, who always gives everything his all. But I think there were a couple of little micro moments that were just small parts of the episode that I thought were particularly good. I thought Quark's interaction with Sisko when he's bribing him. Armin is a powerhouse. I mean, he always is. But I love how subtle and understated his performance in that scene is, and just how calculating and just how he's appraising Sisko. And of course, he outright says it at the end with the rule of acquisition: every man has his price. But I just thought Armin was so fabulous in that scene. But interestingly for me, the scene with Bashir, I am sorry, I'm going to take a lot of heat for this, but I think Siddig is a terrible actor.
Oh!
I do. I think he's awful. He's one of the main reasons I didn't watch Deep Space Nine for a long time. And I think he is actually very good in this particular scene. Especially when the look he gives Sisko, and he says, "I'd like this order in writing, sir." I just think he was outstanding, and he really, how do I want to say this? He really, without dialogue, just with his posture and facial expressions, really conveyed his concern and his morality. And I think that was a really beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah, we really needed it. We needed to see that from somebody.
Yeah. As I say, I couldn't agree more. I've written the same thing down. I personally like Siddig as an actor. I think he's really good for me. And I was drawn to the character from early DS9 onwards, as weirdly enough were Robbie McNeil and Garrett Wang, if you listen to the podcast.
They like him a lot.
Yeah, very much. But yeah, I mean, I liked that because it was placing Sisko in the bad guy role that he seemed to think he was going to be able to avoid. And because, like you say, Bashir was showing his morality about that. And like I said, everybody always forgets that kind of like when he's talking about the consequences of his actions, it's like, 2 criminals and my morality. And, a super weapon getting out the way everyone conveniently brushes under the carpet, This is not nothing. So I think it's an important thing that Bashir says, it's going to go in my report. I'll expect all of this information in writing. And again, I think it helps to make that Latin episode a fantastic counterpoint to this, because it's Bashir who kind of stands as the moral focus in that episode and stands up against Admiral Ross, representing kind of Starfleet's convenient, well, we're doing what we must kind of thing, and allying them directly with Section 31, because that's kind of where we were, I think, at that point. So again, it's a shame we didn't get a chance to look at that episode, because I think it's a fascinating little, it would be a great little duology maybe to do at some point.
Yeah, that's true. It's really heavy and good episode. And
I agree completely with what you said, Vean, about Armin in that role, because like you said, every time you give him a single scene, he'll steal the episode of the show.
Every single time. I love it.
And like, I don't even like the Ferengi as a general rule, but like anytime Armin Shimmerman's on screen, I'm just like, dang it, even though you're a criminal and you're everything I shouldn't like, you're just so flippin' charming, and you so just kind of take the comedy in even moments of darkness, and I don't know, there's something there that's just, you can see why he's kind of a renowned Shakespearean almost actor, you know. And I like that scene a lot because I think we needed that levity at that point. Yeah, I will say, since we're talking about the smaller acting roles before we get to the bigger ones, I think Stephen McCarthy, who played Vreenak, actually did a really good job with quite a thankless thing, because he's basically tasked with being enough of a dick that we can justify murdering him.
Yeah.
And he does a pretty good job of that. You know?
as even for a Romulan, he's a piece of shit.
Yeah. But you kind of, that's like, I kind of put that as like, you hate him, that's the intent. So you can't fault the actor for making you hate him when that was literally the entire point.
Yeah.
And I mean, the guy became a meme at the end of the day. That's got to be pretty impressive. Yeah, I mean, Andy Robinson, you've said you like. I love the guy as an actor, and I think I can appreciate what he's doing, but I just don't like the character of Garak, and I never have. He's another character that just doesn't fit in the Star Trek world for me.
Like a knife in my heart.
I know. I knew you'd take that personally. But yeah, and the weird thing is that they don't seem to even know what they want to do with him, because you can't really take the Garak presented here as the same kind of witty, repartee, you know, innuendo-laden dinners with Bashir Garak that you get earlier on in the show.
Why not? Why can't you?
It's such a jarring change between those two that it's just like, well, so what is this character? Do you know what I mean? It's
he's a psychotic murderer. That doesn't mean he can't have dates.
I'm sure people thought Fred West were quite charming.
People definitely thought that of Dharma, but even so, my issue isn't so much with that. It's the fact that like consistent writing of a character is missing, I think, from him, because he is literally whatever they want at any given moment. Sorry.
Don't you think one of the things that makes him so effective at being a spy and a murderer and everything else, an assassin, is the fact that he is so charming? And of course that works with his interactions with Bashir and things in his personal life as well.
It's like the line from Richard III, I can smile and murder while I smile.
I get all of that. My issues, like I said, isn't so much with that sort of smaller level. It's more like the tone that is applied to scenes with the character. Just the show itself doesn't know what tone to set there, because it seems like it's saying on the one hand, oh, look at this jaunty little person, and then on the other hand is like, you should be terrified of this guy. And it's only, you know, the function of the story as to which one of those two it wants to be in any given moment. It's not to say you can't do both, but like, pick a side. I think in terms of tonality, that I don't know. I'm kind of rambling, and I know what I mean by that, but it's not an issue. It's certainly not Andy Robinson's fault or issue at all. It's more an issue of the writing, I think, where it doesn't know that it wanted Garak to be this serious at first, maybe. But yeah,
I just think that sociopaths are often incredibly charming and manipulative, and so yes, you're going to have these moments of levity with him where it's, oh yes, he's so silly, but you should really be scared of him. And I think that's always kind of bubbling just beneath the surface, even in his more light scenes.
Okay,
that to me is one thing that makes Deep Space Nine so great, so compelling, so excellent. I think everybody here knows it's my favorite. If you've ever heard me ramble about Star Trek, the gray characters make everything more interesting. The same in A Song of Ice and Fire. The same is in A Wheel of Time or Star Wars. They just make it more interesting, more storylines, and just, can you imagine Deep Space Nine without Garak?
Yes, very easily.
I can't. His story, his stuff is so, like, just, it piques your mind. You're like, oh man, that guy, you know, like, you don't want him to be your neighbor, but you want him on your side, I guess is what I mean. There's one particular scene in this episode where Sisko is just nicely walking into a turbo left, and bam, there is the assassin Garrick right next to him unexpectedly, climbing into the turbo left with him, you know? I thought that was great directing, but that just shows you like who he is. He is a master of his craft, and his craft is not being a tailor.
Yeah.
I did like that scene kind of for showing that he's kind of completely unaware of boundaries in terms of, like you said, kind of a bubbling under sociopath. Because it's when Sisko's like, well, it certainly would rouse suspicion if we started walking through ops together. And he's like, oh, yeah, shit, I'm on a lift that's heading towards. I probably better go elsewhere, you know? Which is,
Yeah,
I
but
think,
he's
a
got to
great way
talk
of
to him
summing up, like-
privately, right? But he does have to have a private word, you know. So I mean,
But it's like he's not even aware of, like, that's out of bounds or any of those things. It's just like, I go
he
where I
knows.
want.
Oh, he very much knows it's out of bounds. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Garrick knows all,
Mm.
but he's on a quest, and Sisko's on a quest with him. That's what that handshake was at the beginning.
That's fair enough. I have a quote from Andrew Robinson, which I think may, in part, sum up my distaste for him and the character, and probably makes you guys love him. But I'm just going to share it anyway and say that he stated that this episode demonstrated how Deep Space Nine explored more difficult issues than the other Star Trek series. He commented, basically, it exposed the American innocence that we want to do these things in the world, but we're not willing to take the consequences of our actions. And sometimes we have to do very dirty things and we have to hurt people. And we pretend that that doesn't exist, that Americans would never do that. We dealt with issues like that, and I don't think the other shows really went as far as we did. Okay. I mean, I don't think you have to, personally, but if that's what you like, it's what you like, isn't it? I guess so. And I said, at least it's well acted. I can't really fault that. So I'm not here to criticize that part. But yeah, I would counter that man does not understand what Star Trek is. But anyway, we only really haven't talked acting wise about Avery Brooks, and there's not really much to say other than I think it's a fantastic performance. I always do think that of Avery Brooks. I think, in particular, I think I love the idea, as much as I don't like a lot of the episode, I love the idea to frame it as kind of the fourth wall breaking log, because it shows that this man could basically carry a one-man play, because that's what he's doing. And man, he just sells you on everything, every last bit of it. And I do like that it at least takes the time to show that, like, he feels this guilt. He's not happy about this, you know. He's feeling compromised. The immorality of it is weighing on him. I wish it had went on a bit longer than one episode, you know, but that's been my complaint about kind of classic era Trek and television in general, is that, like, we've got to reset the board at the end of every episode. I would have liked to see this plague Sisko a bit more, you know, for at least a few episodes down the line. But I realise that's not the way TV worked in the, 90s? So fair enough. Do you guys have any thoughts on that, or no?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I don't like Avery Brooks acting.
Is there anybody you do like?
I got used to him. I've gotten used to him, and I just take Avery as Avery, and this is how Sisko is. But I think he makes very weird choices, not just in this episode, but in general. His the way he articulates things, I find it a little disconnected. I think he's weird.
Yeah.
I don't think there's something about the way he performs to me that is very, maybe more theatrical, and
That's what
not
I was
so
just
much
going to
for,
say.
yeah. But it's very disjointed and very let me just say it just doesn't strike me as natural.
Yeah. No, I was going to say that I was
like this. You need a more natural, like compared to Armin, who,
yeah,
despite being a classically trained Shakespearean actor, has a very natural, charming way of speaking for Quark and in other things. But I think Avery's just so over the top so much of the time in a kind of Shatner Kirk kind of way that it's like to me I don't hate the character or anything. I just think the performance is strange.
I think he's playing to a heightened reality, but yeah. I don't hate that in the regard that I know people like that. I know people that when you're talking to them, it doesn't feel like they're, engaged with reality. And so, him being a Starfleet captain, I kind of put as like, you're always having to do a performance almost. You're fulfilling a role. So even though it feels like, I'm watching a performance, because you are, I can justify it as like, well, he's kind of always got to be on. And the more natural moments would probably come between him and his son. And I think you do get some of those without getting into reviewing other episodes, but if you look at things like The Visitor, for example, or Explorers, I think there's some really good, more naturalistic acting in there, which isn't like over the top. But like you said, I can certainly see where you're coming from in terms of everything's very hyper pronounced and enunciated, and it is a performance. It's not what's the word? It's not like method acting. Basically, is the thing. He's not becoming this character and living the reality of it. So okay. But I still like him. Like I said, there's some great moments, and I think I like his performance for what it is, because I just respond to it. How do you guys feel, Vean, Adrienne, and DK about that?
I think Avery Brooks' acting is always a tour de force. He is incredible. I love, love, love that he pronounces every letter in every word, as my grandfather did, as a teacher and professor of language. The other actors who work with Avery are astonished at his skill level, and I love him in this part, especially these little movements. It's a war, people are dying, his son is on the station, like every act, everything is precise because of the times. There's other episodes where Sisko's more relaxed and they're having fun. They're flying together through space on that, old Bajoran ship. I mean, but this isn't that time, and I think he's incredible in this part.
Yeah, I do think he's also got the thankless task of basically having to argue with himself. He's trying to justify things, so it's like, I had to do it. People are dying, but then I had to, so it's kind of like,
but today,
you're never going to come out with that.
This would have been a Grammy Award winning performance. I mean,
an Emmy winning. It wouldn't, because it's science fiction, and that
but
doesn't
also
happen,
he does sing, so ergo the man can sing. So maybe there would have been a Grammy. But it's incredible, and that's why it's one of my go-to episodes when I'm in the mode when I just want to be alone in the dark and everybody sucks. I put this episode on.
Wow, that seems like the last thing you should probably do.
Well, because just to watch Avery, just to watch him go through this acting, like I just imagine what it was like recording this episode. I mean, all the different takes and making this episode and everything. I mean, there's probably a book written about it somewhere.
I don't know, to be honest. What about you, DK? Anything you wanted to quickly add?
Yeah, I like Brooks. I like Brooks a lot. I wasn't that keen on him when he first started. I think he grew into the role a little more as it went on. I always say, when the hair went and the beard came, that's when he, got into the role. But he is very much, I mean, even outside of the role, he is very much a larger than life character. So I can see, Vean's point. It's there are the odd lines where you think, oof, that seemed a little forced. But by this point, I think he'd settled into the role, and I accept his performance for what it is, and I do like it.
Yeah. Fair enough. That's kind of, I think, as much as we need to say about the acting. We've covered everything there. So I'm going to move to the directing, because I do have a little bit of information which I found quite interesting. And it's the only note I've got for the directing, actually, which is to say that the idea for Sisko to slowly undress as the episode progresses was the director, Victor Lobel's. He saw it as serving a double function. On the one hand, Sisko loosening and removing his clothing was simply to convey the passage of time as he paced around the room. On the other, it was a thematic metaphor for how, as Sisko narrates his log, he is literally bearing his soul, which I loved, because I would never have identified that, I don't think. And yet, when you see it, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I like that kind of metaphor level that we're serving on here. Do you guys feel the same, or is it overly pretentious maybe for some of you?
I didn't pick up on it, but it is.
No, me neither.
It is kind of a good little setup. I do like that.
It is. Mm-hmm.
It's a cool little idea, and the fact that it came from the director, yeah, cool.
Yeah. There's a saying in directing is don't let them see your fingerprints, and I think this episode's a really good example of that, because the directing is there, but it's so subtle. You're not picking up on, maybe not consciously picking up on certain things.
Yeah, I agree, because I couldn't make a lot of notes, but that's more because, exactly as you summed up perfectly, the director basically, it's not his job to get in the way of the story and be overly flashy and foreground himself in that way. So I think in essence it speaks to Victor Lobel's skill that I just didn't really, I wasn't noticing anything that stood out as being jarring or anything in that way. So I don't have anything else to say really about that. Did any of you guys have anything? Or
No, I don't really have anything.
okay, cool. So moving to the VFX production design, you know me, so I have to talk about this. The Romulan shuttle is the first new Romulan ship seen since the Romulan scout ship in Next Generation's The Defector. And yes, I do love it, and I think the scene of it landing and decloaking is super cool. And no, I don't own it, but if Eagle Moss are listening and they, they wanted to reward me for owning over 100 of their ships that I have paid for by sending me one, by all means. That's never going to happen, but anyway. So did you guys have anything else that stood out about the sort of VFX, the production design side of things?
I did like the setup of the forgery, how it ends and they bring up the Cardassian logo to show that it's, it could be, the spy network sort of things, the Obsidian Order. It seemed very, I'm not going to say true to life, but it seemed very apropos.
Yeah. See, I didn't like, just this isn't really related, but I didn't like the scene of, because it felt superfluous of them showing the hologram and then saying, "Oh, I've made it more realistic by making them bicker with each other," and it's just kind of like, I don't know if we needed that. It added nothing, and at the end of the day, you've hired 2 guest actors for no reason to come in and do that as well. So,
well, we did glorious manspreading.
I mean, if you say so, I can't say I noticed, to be honest.
I love Tolar, his makeup. Tolar. It was so refreshing. First of all, it was very well done. And secondly, it was so refreshing to see a more elaborate makeup and not just forehead of the week kind of thing.
I see what you mean, yeah.
And I think that the application and design of it was beautiful. And the actor is able to still be super expressive, even with that layer of masking. So I think it was just a masterclass of design. And I also, of course, speaking of the hologram scene, I love Cardassian architecture. And I love the design of that staff meeting room. The color palette and the harsh lines incorporated with smooth lines. I think it's such a beautiful concept design and set design.
I can't say I'm a fan, to be honest. It just strikes me as brown. That's the overriding feeling I get when I look at Cardassian stuff. Yeah, it's brown.
But do you have a limerick that fits this exact point in our conversation?
No, but I'm guessing you have.
Yes, I do, my friends. Can I say it?
Yeah, go for it.
Woohoo! Garak with Tolar is toying, and our Sisko is so not joying. Vreenak's scowl drops low, yet this guy doth know, even hollow Wayun seems cloying.
It's not wrong, actually, to be fair.
Not wrong.
Oh,
Wayun. Oh, my friend, my dear.
On the subject of Grethon Tolar, if you'll allow me to be critical for a second, he said after being critical the entire thing, I did not like that performance. I thought that actor was he was hungry that day and he was eating all that scenery with a side of cheese and ham. So I just thought, like, oof. Anyway.
Do you think they kind of wanted him to bring some levity to the episode with his goofiness?
But I think you can do that, like, I think as kind of we were saying, you can do that in the way that, like, Armin Shimmerman did it while still giving a good performance and not having to come across like clownish.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want 2 quarks, though. I mean, he was supposed to be smarmy and disgusting.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, there's smarmy and disgusting, and then there's like you're coming off like a clown. You know, it's just you're going way over the top with this until the mention of Garak makes him go like, "Oh gosh, I'm so afraid," whatever. Which even still is like, it's like one of the actors from What We Do in the Shadows or something. It's not very, it's not very believable. But anyway, I digress, as they say. So, anything else on VFX, production design, or for that matter, music or sound, anything like that? No?
Not so much. No, it's your standard score.
It did very much start out ominous, though. If you really listen to the score at the beginning, somebody's going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this has stayed surprisingly civil so far, bizarrely. But Yeah, well, it's been an interesting discussion. Hopefully, some people may watch it. So, yeah, we're going to move to the audience response next, then, because we had a massive response to this, to the point that I put out on a few Facebook groups. What do you think of this episode? And it broke my Facebook, and I actually had to delete the posts asking for responses after, I think, an hour, because I had all of the responses that you're about to hear, which is not little, shall we say. There's quite a lot of them. So without further ado, I'm going to move to the section that I call Subspace Communications.
Incoming transmission.
So, I do believe the idea was for you to start us off, maybe, DK, with what you have?
Yeah. Where is it? Yep. In the Pale Moonlight has proven one of the most popular episodes among fans. When the series ended in 1999, Apollo running Sci-Fi Entertainment had this episode as the highest rated show of the entire 7-year run, followed by The Visitor and Far Beyond the Stars. Furthermore, the episode has an average rating of 4.8 out of 5 on the official Star Trek website. That's as of October the 14th, 2008, making it one of the highest rated episodes on the entire site. According to the Star Trek Deep Space Nine companion, page 555, this episode is generally considered by both fans and staff as the darkest Star Trek episode ever made, and the one most antithetical to Gene Roddenberry's initial view of Starfleet, the Federation, and 24th century humanity. Would you like me to continue with the ones that you also sent over?
Yes, please. Yes, if you don't mind.
Yeah. What the heck? I don't have a name on this one. Fleet Captain Salinga, is that right?
Yeah, I had to write the name because it was cut off on the crop that I made, sorry.
Oh, okay. She says, I, not, throwing pronouns around without knowing. I don't care for it. It was basically a big FU of the DS9 writers and producers towards the Roddenberry rules how Starfleet officers in the main cast should behave. Sisko acted like someone today would in such a situation. But if I want to see people acting contemporary, I don't watch Star Trek. Trek becomes completely redundant for me then. One of the reasons why the last seasons of DS9 about the war were frustrating for me because I didn't care much about it. In the end, DS9 became a show I watched because of the brand name Star Trek. Without it, I wouldn't have watched the last seasons. Which is also the reason why I quickly dropped Discovery, because I already wasted too much of my time with DS9 before, and it's more of the same storytelling about cynicism, war and violence. Lazy writers do that when they lack the fantasy for different stories. Many viewers probably love this DS9 episode for narcissistic reasons. A Trek main character behaves like they do in their lives all the time and reflects to them, I do the same shit as you, which makes them feel good about themselves. Which for me is also lazy writing because it's easy for writers to appeal to the narcissism of the viewer and their need to get a positive reflection from the TV screen about their own self. The guy on TV is cynical, so it's perfectly fine if I am cynical too. I can relate to that character. I really don't agree with that. I think that's a crock of shit, to be fair, but there you go.
That's harsh.
Pardon?
I think that's pretty harsh.
Yeah. Despite being a hardcore Roddenberryan, I am fine. This is from Horatio83, by the way. Despite being a hardcore Roddenberryan, I am fine with Sisko turning a blind eye to Garak, doing some nasty stuff for him to get the Rommies into the war. Sisko bribed Quark and allowed Garak to kill some people. The distinction between looking away and doing it yourself might seem trivial, but I don't think it is. At least, I would have a problem with Sisko's actions if he had done all of Garak's dirty work himself. We all know the trolley problem, so I know that it is not rational doing it yourself, or allowing somebody to do something which you don't want to yet admit to yourself, but basically no, boils down to the same thing. It is irrational, but feels right to me. The next one we have is Rear Admiral STJ. Says the moral of the story is you're a noble fellow if, when necessity forces you to commit a wrong against someone, but still feel bad for a little while at least. But the necessity in the story is completely irrelevant to anything in real life, coming from the menace of bad science fiction figures like the Founders. Like the ticking bomb scenario, the enemy with impossible powers is a premise pre-selected for a desired conclusion. Namely, sometimes you have to be immoral or dead. The plotting of how the criminal acts are supposed to save humanity is unbelievable to anyone who has thought about the role of intelligence in the decision to go to war. Again, this is a pre-selected premise. In the case designed to hinge the outcome of the war on a single person's decision, maximum ego boo for vicarious identification, in other words. There isn't a real conflict within Sisko because the premises make any other choice insane. No, conflict isn't drama, choice is drama. Sisko has no choice, therefore is not a significant moral agent. The conclusion is evidently supposed to be ironic, given that Sisko is not really supposed to be able to... Oh, crikey, that's cut off that. Live with himself, but as an open-ended serial, Sisko is able easily to live with himself, meaning that the character development in the episode is meaningless. There's nothing to hate about in the Pale Moonlight, aside from its reactionary politics and the absurd praise it receives. It's just another crap science fiction show. And I think this final one, the Royal Family. On thinking about this earlier, I realised that had this been a Next Generation episode, the Enterprise crew would be trying to defeat Sisko and Garak. Sisko is the typical Next Generation Starfleet naughty fellow. And that's it.
Yeah, that's one lot of opinions, but I do have some from several Facebook groups. And I think we're going to start with the... I shared out from the same Facebook group some information to you guys, Adrienne and Vean. So do you want to let us know what group that is? And Vean, would you like to read your half first, please?
Yeah, I have Ships of the Line. And honestly, it's about 10 pages of people saying 5 out of 5, 5 out of 5, best episode, and quoting it. So I'm just going to out a few, actually, if that's okay.
Of course, yeah,
it's
sure.
A lot of the same. Top contributor John Locke says, this and for the uniform demonstrate the lengths that Sisko will go to complete a mission by any means necessary. Similarly, he gave the order to Worf to fix the Galwan problem towards the end of the war. Sisko is quite simply a badass. Yes, he crossed moral lines in desperate situations. I don't think he betrayed Starfleet. This is David Roche. I don't think he betrayed Starfleet. Stretched it, sure, not betrayed. And Jimmy Aldridge adding on to that, they agreed with his plan. He had permission after he started, but still, LOL. So I guess people aren't super serious about it. Desperate times call for desperate measures. He can live with it. One of my favorites. Lots and lots of that. Robin Everett says, it's the single greatest episode of all time. Clever, well-written, and real. People forget how many unscrupulous things had to be done to defeat the Nazis and the Japanese during World War II. I don't think we forget. I think we take issue with some of it. But anyway, the morality of war and survival are easy to pass judgment upon in times of peace. Here, Sisko is forced to face up to the realities of war, morality, and the greater good. Your favorite expression, Mike. He knows what he has done, and yet he can live with it. Victor Segato didn't appreciate it at all, stayed away from DS9 altogether. Versus Paul Withers, who says, absolutely a masterpiece. This and Duet are my favorite. Alexander Womack, to my point, wasn't the first time he committed war crimes, and you know what? I can live with that. A lot of I can live with that.
Cool. And was that everything you had for your half, yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Adrienne, did you want to share as much as you can of yours then with us?
Well, do you just want me to read a few? Or should I read
Yeah, just a handful. I mean, we don't want to go on too long, but yeah.
Okay. 6 out of 5 says Robert Rauschauer, the best episode of the series. Christopher Henry says, this was by far my favorite episode of any Star Trek series, if not the series. The writing and delivery were second to none, especially the last minute or two. Sisko tries to convince himself that it was all worth it.
Okay.
Amir Nazamada says, one of the best episodes of the franchise, one of the best of the series, and a defining moment for the Sisko character. Dale Sexton said, I think it doesn't happen without Garak. I agree, Dale. Don Hilton said, it's the best of Trek. Brian McGaw says the Federation was losing the war. They needed the Romulans. And Paul McDowell says it's the best DS9, hands down. So I lied, I cheated, I bribed men to cover the crimes of other men. So that's all.
Cool. So I have a few things as well, just to finish us off then. From Star Trek Strange New Worlds group, W.J. Landy just says 5 stars. As Quark says in the episode, every man has his price. Candy McCroskey agrees and says yes, 5. And then Robert Kaczynski has a gif of Garak saying yes. From Star Trek VIP Nerd Lounge, Fedor van der Hoer just says perfect Trek. From Star Trek fans British Isles, Jamie Ellis says 5 out of 5. Jeffrey Ahern says solid 5, one of the best episodes ever. Damien McElvogue says 5, one of the best Trek episodes. Simon Allen says 5, a guilty conscience is a small price to pay. Gareth Pegg says brilliant episode, echoes of Churchill and bringing America into World War II with Pearl Harbor, showing the lengths needed in war. John Gilby says all the stars in the Alpha Quadrant. Andrew Simons says 5+++. Did Sisko betray Starfleet? Yes, Starfleet values, but not Starfleet the organization. That's one of the reasons it's rated so highly. Mark Brooks says 5 out of 5, one of the best episodes. Acting alone was top-notch, story was excellent. Sisko betrays his own morality, but every man has his price. Brilliant. Trekkies and Whovians Unite group, Thomas Cookson says 5 out of 5. Morally speaking, though, if the ends justify the means for Sisko, it does bring to question whether he had any grounds to condemn Eddington, Admiral Layton, or Section 31 for also going to extremes to defeat the Dominion/Cardassians. From Trekkies and Whovians Unite, this is quite a long one. Matt McKeever says 4.5 out of 5 for good science fiction generally, but 1 out of 5 for a Star Trek episode. The episode defies the heart of Star Trek, the romantic ideal set down by Gene Roddenberry and Gene Kuhn. Humanity would improve over the centuries. A Starfleet captain was portrayed as the pinnacle of human achievement. It's this view of the future that defines Star Trek, that we'll survive and explore because we improved, not just because our technology did. Instead of living up to this ideal, Sisko's character betrays his own code of ethics. A Gene Kuhn-written Starfleet officer would have found a way to bring the Romulans into the war without having anyone murdered. Instead, the authors of the story and teleplay have a realistic or even nihilistic view of humanity, that we all succumb to the circumstances and betray the moral code that made us, deserving to explore space to begin with. Their message is that we will not improve and we'll use the easy, dirty ways out of our problems. Unfortunately, this episode reinforced the corrupt Starfleet officer plot trope as well. So great storytelling, but terrible Star Trek. And we were going to have another guest on if we had any dropouts, because he did desperately want to be on the episode. Justin Avery, I believe. Justin Daniels, sorry, who's been on an episode before. Did say he wanted to be on it, but did leave me his thoughts and just said, I'm curious what your opinion is, because I have many opinions, and I don't necessarily think they're the most popular ones. I love and hate this episode, so it's definitely complex. Everyone says Sisko is the best captain because of his actions here. He's arguably the worst because of them. I do appreciate Garak in this episode a lot. It was some of his best character development. I won't go on. I could talk all day, but, you're not wrong when you call Sisko a massive hypocrite, which I did. And I do have one last one from our Instagram page. Destination_yesterday says, I likely saw this, but I don't remember it. That says a lot. I loved the first season of DS9, but it started rapidly going downhill after that. In my opinion, it didn't represent what I love about Star Trek. So that's all of the feedback, which is more mixed than I was expecting, to be brutally honest. But it's still an awful lot of people, claiming this is the greatest thing ever. So obviously popular. So with that out of the way, we're going to move to basically giving our final thoughts and then our conclusions. So we'll start by giving our favourite character moment and line from the episode.
Spark, analysis.
Vean, I'm going to come to you first because you're the first person I saw when I looked up. So line up. Who's your favourite character in the episode?
Well, clearly Garak. He's my favorite character in the series, possibly in all of Star Trek. Favorite moment. I actually love this part in the turbo lift where he has sent Tolar, and I may have left him with the impression that if he tried to open the door, it would explode. And Sisko's like, that better just be an impression. And Garrick's like, let's not dwell on such minutiae. I love that moment.
Good
I think that is hilarious.
Yeah.
Was that your favorite line as well then?
Come back to me. Let me think on it. Circle back around.
Okay. So we'll go through all three of them together then. DK, I'll come to you next. What's your favorite character moment and line?
Favorite character, Sisko. Favorite scene, that what turned into be a bit of a slugfest in the tailors at the end. And favourite line, I lied, I cheated, I bribed men to cover the crimes of other men, I'm an accessory to murder, but the most damning thing of all, I think I can live with it. And if I had to do it all over again, I would.
Okay. Anything else you wanted to add as to reasons why, or is that you're happy to go on with that?
I'm fine with
Cool.
just dropping that.
Sure. What about you then, Adrienne?
My favorite character is Garak. I think he's the best on the show. My favorite moment is when Sisko stands up right after he's there sitting down. Jadzia and Dr. Bashir are there, and Worf comes in to tell him about Renak's untimely demise. It's his facial expression, and for Sisko, he basically loses it. He rushes in to basically say hello to Garak, which leads to DK's favorite scene.
Okay.
So I guess it's sort of mine too.
Okay. And did you have a line that you wanted to drop? Or?
Yes, my favorite line is by Sisko. I need help. Are you in or not? And then Garak says, he pauses and said, I'm in, and they shake hands. That handshake.
No, that sounds like a line out of a slash fic. Sorry, I could not resist. That really did sound faintly dirty. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
I can give you some recommendations for reading, Mike.
No, I'm good. Thanks. But yeah, that was my desperate attempt to be funny in an episode where everyone hates me. I'm sure of the listeners. But no, that's cool. Was that everything, Adrienne?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. My favourite character was controversially Bashir. I think he's the only one in this whole episode who acts like a Starfleet officer. My favourite moment was the end, partly because it's very impactful when Sisko kind of, deletes the log, but it's also how I feel about this whole thing. Just erase it. I am kidding, by the way. And my favourite line was, superficial, do you know how much this shirt cost? Quark. Bring in the levity.
Good old reliable Quark.
Yeah, for sure.
And yeah, cool. So did you have a line then, Vean, yet, or shall we move on?
Yes. As much as I love that turbo lift moment, my favorite line is probably Garrick's little mini speech in the shop when, because Sisko knew what he was doing. Okay, let's be real. Sisko comes in there acting like, I didn't know you were going to kill him. Yes, he did. You knew what Garak is about. You knew what he was capable of, and you knew what you were asking him to do. You didn't want to admit it. So my favorite, you want me to read the little speech?
Yeah, go for it. Why not?
That's why you came to me, isn't it, Captain? Because you knew I could do those things that you weren't capable of doing. Well, it worked, and you'll get what you want, a war between the Romulans and the Dominions. And if your conscience is bothering you, should soothe it with the knowledge that you may have saved the entire Alpha Quadrant. And all it cost was the life of one Romulan senator, one criminal, and the self-respect of one Starfleet officer. I don't know about you, but I'd call that a bargain.
Intense. Your performance almost sold me on that for a second there. But
well,
no,
I was channeling Andy Robinson. I would actually play it a little different, but I was doing my best Andy there. A little speed reading.
And before we say goodbye, it occurs to me, DK, you promised us a haiku as well that we haven't gotten to yet. So do you have that with you?
Really? Of course it's a fake. The Federation would fall. I'd do it again.
Oh, I do like that one. Sums it up pretty perfectly. We're going to give our conclusion and our score out of 5 Starfleet Deltas, as we always do. Shall I just go first and get it out of the way?
Go on.
Because you all know what's coming. Okay. I said, I've made no secret of the fact that I hate this episode. It makes me physically uncomfortable and sick to my stomach. I don't know whether it's the real-life ramifications of supporting the ends justifying the means, or the desecration of a franchise that stands almost alone in my world as a shining example of hope, optimism, and the idea that we can be better. Is it good drama? Probably. Is it good Star Trek? Absolutely not. I'm sure I've made all the arguments and counter-arguments already, and if current discourse is anything to go by, you'll dismiss them and stick rigidly to your own position. But try and be fair. From the start of this podcast, I said I'd be respectful, but I'd be honest. And honestly, that's how I feel. It doesn't invalidate your opinion. I'm just giving mine. In the interests of fairness, I will acknowledge some truly great acting performances, especially Brooks, Robinson, and McCarthy, and I can see what the writing is going for, even if I strongly disagree with it. So I can't write this off entirely, but it's all in service of something I just can't stand. So it's not a score that's going to be popular. I give it 1.5 or 1.5 stars out of 5. So since we've done one host, we may as well go to the other. DK, You're going to provide an interesting counterpoint to my opinions now, aren't you, with your conclusions?
Yeah. It may not be Roddenberry's vision. In fact, it's the antithesis of said vision. But that, to me, just hammers home how dire the circumstances are for the events of this episode to proceed the way they do. It's a dark script, some top-notch performances, and an atmosphere of hopelessness, double-dealing, and the loss of morals and convictions when the shit hits the fan are front and centre. And I don't think any other series in DS9 could have pulled this off. We hadn't seen an episode quite like it, and I do hope we never do again, such as the subject matter and how it's dealt with. It doesn't glamorise the choices made. Sisko isn't in the right. He knows it, despite what he achieved, and for me, that's what makes it work. It may not be to everyone's taste, but it's a powerful piece of television, and I've given it 4 out of 5.
Okay, cool. Adrienne, I'm going to come to you next, if that's okay, for your conclusion and score.
My conclusion, a little bit unconventional. I was watching these episodes live, taping them on VHSs back in the day, and this particular maybe 7-episode arc of Deep Space Nine really stuck with me.
Okay.
This is episode 19, so episode 14 was One Little Ship, which was kind of funny, but then they started to go dark. Episode 15 was Honor Among Thieves, which was emotionally dark. Change of Heart was Jadzia being hurt, and that was sad. Wrongs Darker Than Death or Night was Kira basically loses her soul for a minute. Inquisition was super dark with Sloane, and then this came in the Pale Moonlight, and we saw Dark Sisko, and I didn't know where this show was going. But the next episode was His Way, which thankfully ends with love. And so this was just, I remember being very, very dark and seeing that, even Sisko had gone dark. But, I give this episode a 5 out of 5 for the acting, the writing, and just the emotional tearing us apart kind of a thing. So it's a 5 for me.
I thought you were going to say that your conclusion was unconventional because it was in the form of a limerick.
Oh, jeez.
No, that's fair enough. Vean, did you have a conclusion and score out of 5 for us, please?
Yeah, I don't have anything prepared. I didn't write anything up, but excuse me. It's absolutely a 5 out of 5 for me. In terms of the acting alone, even looking at the minor characters of the episode, not minor characters of the series, but minor characters of the episode, Jadzia's scene, Bashir's scene, Quark's scene, these are all really standout performances, even in these micro moments. And I think that alone makes this a 5 out of 5 for me, because I'm such an acting snob. So, but yeah, I understand your position, Mike. I really do, because I take a similar position with most any other case of abandoning Roddenberry's vision. But I do think this is plausible and in character for Sisko. And I do think it would have worked better, as I said earlier, if it had been him going solo on this. But it is what it is. And I think it is an absolute masterpiece of understated directing, beautiful performances, and that merging of makeup design, set design, and my 2 favorite Cardassians are in one episode, and that's always a plus.
Yeah, so then we've all given our scores, so all that remains is to add those together, divide by the number of people here, which gives you a final score for In the Pale Moonlight of 3.875 out of 5. So, yeah, not going to be topping the leaderboard, thank goodness, but, I think that's mainly my fault. So, yeah, that will wrap up another episode of Hit or Miss Star Trek, which it's an episode I was dreading, truth be told, but wasn't too painful, thankfully, in the end, and hopefully we're all still friends and we remain civil. So, like I said, if you particularly adore this episode, more power to you. Hopefully you've enjoyed hearing from the people that agree with you. If you have a differing view, then hopefully we've presented that to you as well. Excuse me. So all that remains is for me to thank everyone who's with us here today. First of all, thank you, Adrienne, for rejoining us.
Woohoo! It was awesome.
Cool. And where can people find you on the internet?
I'm barely there right now, so you probably won't find me, but I am at AL Park-Tucker 2 on X.
Yeah, I think we're all basically trying to avoid the series finale of the United States at the moment, aren't we, really? So...
Oh, God.
Oh, good Lord. I don't have to live there, at least. But anyway, Vean, thank you so much for joining us for another episode. And where can people find you, if anywhere, on the internet?
Most everywhere, I use the same handle, Lady Vean, and that's Vean.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's cool. And DK, you're still in hiding?
Yeah. Yeah, sociability does nothing for me.
I know the feeling. If you want to contact myself or DK, you can do so via any of the means that we have set up for the podcast itself, which will hopefully be on screen if I've edited it in, if you're watching on YouTube. If not, you can always find our link tree in the episode description, which will lead you to all of our different social medias. Do get in touch if you have any thoughts or opinions, or you want to be a guest on the show, or you think you can help us in some way, or, spread the word with the podcast. We're only here in so long as you actually want us, so if we are getting views and everything, fair enough. If we're getting the message that nobody wants this, then it'll stop. So, yeah, if you want this to carry on, please do share, spread the word, and enjoy. And so, yeah, see how these episodes do and see if we're going to progress any further with the podcast from there. But we are definitely going to be doing our, I think, favourite Discovery episodes and a Discovery series review in the coming months. So you can always look out for those and always find us on our sister podcast, Silver Screen Podcast, where we're always well busy doing other things. And yeah, hopefully we'll be back here soon. Keep an eye on our social media to find out when. And until then, remember, we are Starfleet. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.
You have been listening to the Hit or Miss Star Trek podcast, hosted by Michael Wilson and DK. Produced and edited by Mike Wilson. Additional material by DK. Please remember to like this episode and spread it throughout subspace. Subscribe to the Hit or Miss YouTube channel and follow us online. Links to all of our social media pages can be found via the link tree listed in the episode's description. For any queries or to apply to be a guest on the show, you can also email homstartrek@gmail.com. This podcast is part of the Mike's Podcasts Network. You can listen to this and our sister podcasts on all good podcast providers by searching for Mike's Podcasts. Hit or Miss Podcast was based on an idea by Michael Wilson and Will Templer. Thank you for joining us. We hope you'll be back, but for now, hailing frequencies closed.
I'm gonna warp out of here at once, maximum speed.